Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here. I'm with Michael Sands. This is the Outsourced PM podcast show. And Michael, we have covered a lot of topics so far, some really good ones.
I'm just surprised at the feedback we're getting, Darren. We speak about these topics all the time, but it's like a foreign language with so many people, and it's resonating with so many agencies out there.
But I think the message is sinking in that literally, if we put every task done in property management into a box, 80% of those tasks don't have to be done by someone based in the office. We've learned through COVID with working virtually, working remotely, we've got a computer, we've got an internet, jobs can be done anywhere. Particularly bosses have realized where restrictions have forced staff into home offices, it can be done anywhere. So now bosses are realizing the spectrum's open. I don't even possibly need a person based in my city. It could be outside the city. And we're saying they can be based anywhere in the world, long as they're the right person, they have a computer, and they have the internet. And today, Michael, we've already touched on with previous podcasts. And if you haven't already seen the previous ones that we've got, of course, just go to the podcast section on the inspiredgrowthtraining.com website or teamsbydesign.com. You can get the links there, or just go to Spotify, iTunes, or go to Podbean. Now, we've already covered a lot of nuts and bolts stuff. We covered the leasing process and how virtual assistants can help us with taking leasing inquiry, getting the application form together. We've done a separate podcast on how virtual assistants right now, Michael, you're working and you've processed over 100,000 tenancy applications successfully using virtual assistants. And that's with Teams by Design working for top performance property management businesses right now. But we're still on the actual leasing process. Let's now talk about that. Once the application's been processed, the tenant has been approved, the next stage between the tenant fully moving in, let's talk about how we can get virtual assistants involved in that process. So Michael, typically the application's now been approved. What would be the next step that a virtual assistant can be competently involved with, taking away the workload and the mundane nuts and bolts work that a local office worker currently does?
Yeah, so I think the continuation here is, so once an application's approved, so we send it off to our client, they say, yes, this application's approved, and they would normally have a template email saying this is the approved negotiated rent, these are the lease terms, this is any special conditions. We would then take that information and just put that into the lease, whatever the conditions are, the terms, and that we clarify the particulars from the application. We would then put that onto DocuSign or whatever platform the agency is using to get that signed. We have some agents that aren't actually on DocuSign or online signing yet. So what we have to do in that instance is
really, even with COVID, still people are on old school.
Yeah, so we're logged into their server, Darren, and we use their printer. So people are still coming into the office to collect everything.
So you've got virtual assistants that create the leases and press a button and it spits the paper off on their printer in their office.
Yeah, and so all they do is and we also book in the move-in time for them. So we say, Darren, the tenants are going to be coming in at 1 o'clock on Friday, and so we make sure we print off the handouts that they use for their onboarding and also the lease agreement. And so all they need to do is at that time go to their printer, pick it up, and sit down at the table. I'm talking WA, referencing that, and obviously, Darren, they've had a lot more luxury and freedom during COVID time, so it hasn't really impacted their business. But otherwise, other people using online signing, so we would send it off through DocuSign or Adobe EchoSign, things like that. Now, we also would enter the application details into the property portal. So Property Tree, Property Me, whoever it is, we enter all that information in there. We make sure we enter the bond, the rent, making sure that whichever state or agency that it's, either monthly, weekly, bi-monthly, whatever the rent calculation is. We fill in all those particulars. We make sure all the application supporting documents are saved on file. Also on the portal, so that there's quick reference for the agent. They can see the application and the lease and everything. We also set up the banking information. So, for us, Darren, we would have our BPay number or bank number as the tenant ID, so that when tenants made their payment, they use that number, our bank would link up to their profile immediately.
Let's take a step back here, Michael, because just again, a reminder, everybody, this is not Michael doing the work. This is virtual assistants doing this work. And I'm thinking, again, I've got my old school hat on. I need to, in these circumstances, I need to throw these questions at you. We're going back. We've got the application. We've got the details, the start date. We've got the term of the lease. We've got the start date of the lease. We've got the rent amount. We've got the bond amount. We know the owner's details for the tenancy agreement. We've got the tenant's name details, all the basics there. We would know about on the property me or property tree system about special conditions that pertain to that property, pets allowed, all of that. We've got all of that. And as you know, we know virtual assistants are trained to collect that, but there is still property manager knowledge required in leases. So for me, a 12-month lease would start on it would be for 365 days. So if it starts on the 1st of January, I would be finishing the lease on the 31st of December. That's how I would be doing it. And I understand some property managers have different principles around that, but bond amounts vary different according to legislation. In South Australia, for example, you can have 4 or 6 weeks rent depending on certain things, all of that. So there's still property manager skills and knowledge involved. Michael, how do the virtual assistants overcome those sort of issues?
I guess it's rule-based too, Darren. So like our team would typically, let's say it's WA, they'd be working in WA. If it's Victoria, the VA would be working in Victoria. So they become familiar with the legislation, the bond amounts. And that's also an instruction from the agency. There's no difference, Darren, if you're having someone in your office as opposed to someone working from home. The instructions are still the same. It's the clarity and rules around that. So, we lodge the bond. So we look at the bank account. If the bond is there, then, we'll alert the bond authority. Yep, money's in the account. You can debit it now, right? And so we've got to make sure it's within certain timeframes. Once the money's received, it's cleared. So legislation doesn't change just because you've got someone helping you.
Okay. And also getting into the data entry, what are some quick tips and hints for people that have never had a VA data entering stuff? What are some quick technology tips that the people can be training their VAs on? What technology or what ways would you recommend that they can be training a virtual assistant to be doing data entry?
I think it comes down to attention to detail, right? So again, going back to when people apply for work with us, we have questions in there, strategic questions to catch people with their attention to detail. And I think that if they're successful there and then they get through and they're able to work with an agency, for them entering in data, it involves strong attention to detail. So I'm comfortable and confident with anyone that we place. But if you've gone out and selected your own virtual assistant and everything, you may not have gone to that level of detail that we've gone to. And look, Darren, sometimes mistakes happen in your office. Sometimes your property manager or the department head make mistakes. I find though that when you're in an office, you're not so much in the fishbowl. Like you don't have all the eyes on you. It's easy for you to kind of fix an error. When you're a virtual assistant, I feel a lot of the time that people in office they're waiting. They're waiting. This can't be true. This person can't be great. They're looking for that mistake. So things you can do to safeguard is just kind of constantly communicating with your virtual assistant. Hey, Darren, I need this application entered in, it's been approved, and just make sure you look at the rent term. Or so I would be open and I would constantly make reference to people in my office as well as people offshore to say, hey, and just note the rent is $350 a week. It might be negotiated. It might just be something.
How would they communicate with them, Michael? What's a quick way for an office person to communicate with that virtual assistant? What's a good way?
A really simple way is the phone. Pick up the phone and call them. But if you're looking for something just short and sharp, we use like Slack, so something that's short messaging. There are other platforms out there. And with Slack, you can have different channels on there. So it might be leases, and it might be lease renewals. So at least in that lease box there, Darren, this person's been approved. These are the terms. These are the conditions. At Darren, and it's done.
With my virtual assistants, I use Google Chat and I use Google Tasks. And that really works well for us and our little team pod. And I can quickly send a message. I can call and do it the old school way. I do a lot of, we meet by Zoom, or I use Loom videos, which is screen recording technology. There's just for everyone out there, it's just so easy to do. You'll be absolutely blown away that you can actually more accurately and quicker and more effectively and efficiently delegate a task to a person virtually than a team member in the office. Then simply verbal instructions. Hey, by the way, can you do this? It's so inefficient to do it that way.
But, more credit to Bev, Darren, because not only is she on your Google chat, she's also on Slack, and she's also on Workplace, and then she's also on Facebook chat sometimes. So it just goes to show that, different lines of communication, should be really clear and succinct. But you get people that are just so switched on, they can handle communication. They know where it's coming from. They know what to do with it. And Darren, Bev is a real golden find.
I can say, everyone, Bev is IGT's executive assistant. She does all my email management. She very competently can call anyone and hold a very good conversation. She does also, all the marketing emails that come out. She does all the proofreading of those. So, Bev is certainly our superstar, but she's not unique. There are a lot of executive assistants. If you're thinking about it, needing an executive assistant to take the load off of you, if you're a boss, of course, speak to Michael. But let's get back on track, Michael. So we talked about data entry, and I guess the next cab off the rank when it comes to preparing the application for tenancy and getting that gap to where the tenant's now moved in. We've talked about data entry. And we've talked about leases. You even said, hey, if we have to, the virtual assistant can press a button and it prints off in the office. So the documents can be printed off. Let's talk about the welcome pack. There are offices out there. The welcome pack is that package of old school paper or digitally supplied to the tenant with, local council or local services or information about being a tenant with ABC Realty or whatever pack that's there that's separate to the legal obligatory documents of leases and stuff. This is the non-obligation stuff. What are some things, because offices are doing it different. They're still signing up tenants old school in the office. They're now signing up tenants virtually by Zoom. What are some ways that the virtual assistant can be helping out here?
So a lot has changed with COVID too, Darren. It used to be that a property manager would say that they have to do the reference calls for an application because they have to listen to the prenup pauses. But now, more often than not, property managers are sending off the faceless email to get a reference done, and they're not listening to prenup pauses anymore. They're just kind of waiting for a one-word response from a property manager. And for me, I still think the calls have to be made because you need to really double check a portion of tenants.
Yeah.
The other thing too that was interesting is so many property managers pre-COVID said, I have to meet the person and I need to look them in the eyes and I need to lay down the law. But with COVID, tenants haven't been really able to come into an office and speak with the property managers. So much is done on Zoom. So we used to, Darren, we bought your hand guide. So if anyone's listening to this, Darren's hand guides that he had and that, they're with IGT, were some of the most valuable booklets and information that I had when I was doing my onboarding, because it sets out clearly, and this isn't a plug, but I know Darren, they're for sale on the website, but they are like a Bible because they set out everything from expectations on cleaning. And the good thing is, it comes through as a Word document. We're able to edit and put our spin and what's important to our company in this hand guide. So when we were sending the lease out, we were attaching it with the lease, and we were getting people to sign all the sections on there that we found hyper relevant. Now, fast forward to today, Darren, to speed up this process, I have no problem in a COVID environment where you can't meet someone physically, doing an onboarding on Zoom where you can look at them in the eyes, right? You've done the application process, they're a good person. But people now should have onboarding videos. So every point that you've got in that hand guide, Darren, should be turned into a video. And these are the things that are sent to the tenant as part of that onboarding. So that when you are doing your Zoom catch up or handing the keys over, they've watched it, right? They've done everything there. And the virtual assistant can send these out so once the lease goes out, it's signed, then they can get their onboarding information, and it's a seamless process. So again, the property manager is saving so much time, right? Not doing the grunt work. They know that when they're going to eyeball the person on Zoom or in the office, giving them the keys or whatever that process is for them, that the onboarding's done, that they're picking up the keys because they've done the onboarding and someone else has done it for them.
And it makes such a difference. I mean, for me, the workload is taken off of me because of all the work that Bev does. Imagine the workload that we can, the weight that we can take off property managers' shoulders with this stuff.
It's like you say,
it's just done for them. If it's printed off, bang, there it is. The leases have been entered. It's been entered into the system for them. The welcome pack has been prepared and printed off if they have to, or supplying it or whatever. Are handy. It's like it is a property manager assistant doing all of this stuff for you, but they're just not working next to you in your office. They're just available one internet connection away, as if they were sitting in the next room. It literally is that. You can imagine putting a person in another room, shutting the door, and you can only talk to them through the computer or through a phone. You'll now suddenly discover Zoom. You'll now suddenly discover screen recording technology. You'll now discover chats. You'll now discover the phone and all those things. You don't literally have to have a person sitting next to you showing them stuff. It all can be done on the computer there.
I was talking to a business owner today, Darren, and he was not challenging me, but he was saying, so because they've got virtual assistants at the moment and they're looking to get some more and they're asking for our help. And they were saying, like, Michael, what's the difference having a virtual assistant in another country answering the phones, replying to emails, doing A, B, C, D? And I said, look, there's not. And he goes, exactly. There's no reason why you can't have a virtual assistant doing all the property management tasks and the people in my office can be income producing customer service. And at that point, I was like, you probably don't need me in this meeting because you've got it, right? You understand.
But Michael, I've come up with a weakness. All right. Here is something a virtual assistant cannot do, and that's the ingoing inspection. But what can a virtual assistant be involved with the ingoing inspection or the property condition report or the move inspection, whatever you guys want to call it? How can the virtual assistant help manage that process?
As far as the ingoing goes, so the agency would go out there and do the ingoing inspection, the condition report. We would do the exit and the ingoing at the same time. As an office to save some time there, but we have agencies and they'll do the report on their app, and then they'll close it off, and then the virtual assistant would access that from the desktop, clean everything up, make sure the right names are in there, make sure that if there's any spelling mistakes or anything, go through that. They'll run their eyes over that, and then it's ready to send out. If there are photos that the person's done separate to the report, so I know some agencies take more photos. And they don't fit on all the applications because of size or whatever, but anything else that needs to be attached, reduced in size, the virtual assistant does, and they send that off. No. Also, the ingoing, they follow that up. So 3 days later, or whatever the time frame is for the office, they'll follow that up. Hey Darren, how did the move-in go? Perfect. Look, we haven't got the condition report back yet. Have you finished it? We do need to get it back today. Is there anything we'd help you with?
I mean, how many tenants never actually return their form? They just don't. And I remember I would always present, here's 2 copies. In South Australia, we had to provide 2 copies to the tenant. We check and make any amendments and return within 14 days. That's what we had in South Australia. Your legislation may be different elsewhere, but hardly anyone returned the thing. And I wasn't there or had the time to go and remind people. I just made sure that I covered my obligation at the start. But if we've got virtual assistants that can help do the follow-up, that's fantastic.
And Darren, you talk about how the onboarding process, going through the applications, entering data entry, it's like 12 to 16 hours just for that, in addition to all the day-to-day management that the office are doing. That's huge. So if you're looking to take out 50%, 75%, even 80 or 90% of that process, your property manager is going to be doing all the important things, liaising with the owner. They'll have time to liaise with the tenant too, because they're not focusing on the trivial matters. They're focusing on the high level.
So already we can see there's so much burden that's been taken off the property manager because they've got a virtual property manager assistant helping them. All right, so Michael, we've covered, again, the application's been approved. We've covered data entry. We've covered the welcome pack. and getting those goodies ready for the property manager. Wow. I mean, there's already a lot of busy the property manager doesn't have to do. Now we've got the ingoing inspection management sorted and helped out. How can a virtual assistant be assisting around tenant induction?
Again, so with the tenant induction, the property manager now doesn't need to be physically there with them to eyeball them. And
it's very acceptable now to do an induction if we have to by Zoom. It's, you know, I'm an old school property manager. I still believe we need to meet with the tenant and go through right expectations to make sure they're fully aware of what's expected. I'm not going to personally sit a tenant in front of a video and let that do all the work. But a Zoom allows it to be done, right?
I mean, there's merit to it, though. I mean, you get on a plane, it doesn't matter how many times you get on a plane, Darren, they always show you what to expect about this flight, what you can do, what you can't do, what our expectations are of you as a passenger. There's no reason why in real estate, the tenant, right, can't get an onboarding such as that. Hi, welcome to ABC Realty. Today, we want to go through the most important elements of moving into this property, what you can expect from us and what we expect from you. Right, and they watch that, and then you have your meeting. Any questions about that? Yeah, we really want to focus on the core items here, 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you think? Right, you still get that opportunity, but a lot of that tenant induction onboarding is done. I remember I was at a airport in Las Vegas, right, of all places, and the check-in counter, you know, before they had all the booths here at the airport, the check-in process was there. And I'd go and I enter this, and this, and I've checked into the plane. I didn't have to speak to anyone, but the process was there and it was simple. A lot of people will be more respondent when they're in the comfort of their own home and they're able to kind of watch, engage, do things themselves. I mean, the next step is, Darren, send them a Calendly link. So if you know that you'll only do move-ins on like a Wednesday afternoon and a Friday afternoon because that suits your inspections, when you send them that video and they finish watching it, the Calendly link goes out. They can then set the time of the handover, so they feel like they're in control.
So they're using a Calendly link. So everyone, that's Calendly, Calend with ly on the end.com. That's a great. We use it all the time in the business for people to book directly into my diary, and I can control how long the appointment goes for. I can ask certain questions. I can restrict when the appointment can happen, when it can't. You know, check that out. But I think, Michael, that's just great. It's just an extension of all this technology we've been forced to take on board, but it's really helpful.
And you know, another thing, Darren, like on the induction and the onboarding, I checked in at a hotel in LA, and when I was in, I got an AI message sent to me saying, you know, hey, it's Ivy. I'm the digital concierge. Do you need anything? Do you need any extra towels, pillows, or anything? Just message back. And so I took that, and that tech wasn't available back in Australia at the time, and the software wasn't there. So I got my VA to pretend to be a digital AI concierge. And when the tenants moved in, they reached out with a text message, you know, hey, Darren, hope you're finding the place. Well, you know, I'm X, I'm the online concierge. Do you need anything? And we trialed that. Now there's the AI around it. But again, it's that extension of service. So when the tenant moves in after a few days, checking in on them, is there anything we can help you with? My VAs also would send out pizza when I knew they were moving in. Yes, it was normally like Domino's or Pizza Hut because that was open during the daytime. But we sent it out, and it cost us like $20 or $30. But it got sent out because, you know, when people are moving in, that's tiring.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, what else? What else can a virtual assistant be doing to accentuate the tenant experience?
Again, doing things like that, doing the follow-up touch points afterwards. The property manager, yep, they can call, but if they know they've been dealing with someone else through the experience, it's fine for that person to continue that experience and that journey, but also letting them know, you know, thanks, Darren, for all the feedback you've given us during your move-in. I've made sure that Dennis is aware, who is the property manager. What I'll be doing now is I'll be sending, yourself, Darren, and Dennis an email, making sure if you've got any other questions that you have, please send us an email or log into the portal. You know, these are the next steps of what to do and how to report maintenance. And again, you would reiterate how to log maintenance. Yes, you do it before they move in, but the best time to also do that is about 3 or 4 days after they move in. Reiterate how do you log maintenance, and the virtual assistant helps you with the maintenance. So they are there. So the property manager, Darren, all they're really doing is getting feedback from the VA saying, yep, they've moved in, they're happy, they got the pizza. They've said there's no maintenance at the moment, but I'll follow them up in a few days just in case they find anything as they've moved in, right? And you catch it there. You're not waiting for the first inspection. But the VA has done all this.
But the service levels have just gone through the roof because a property manager is never going to do this stuff.
They don't have time to do it.
They don't. And that's the whole point, is that virtual assistants, everyone, can just take your service levels to a whole new level in a very efficient and very cost-effective way, because you haven't done this stuff because you're thinking the cost of having that staff member in the office doing it, it's unheard of. You just wouldn't do it. But virtual assistants just open a whole new world of customer service. So, Michael, I think there's some really good stuff there. And I think there's a lot of good things that people can talk to you more on. So if people want to know more about how to get a virtual assistant on board and do the tenant onboarding process, get involved with application processing, get involved with taking leasing inquiry, taking that real burden off the team, getting involved with any other type of process, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So if you want to reach out and book in a strategy call so we can see how we can help and how we can give you some strategic advice, just go to the website, teamsbydesign.com, the contact us, book in a time, and then, we'll catch up and we'll go through everything you want to cover.
And everyone, look, we've got a list of 30 different tasks that you can typically outsource to a virtual assistant, which means you're unbusying your property managers. Just go to teamsbydesigntasks.com. That's teamsbydesigntasks.com. But Michael, I think that was a great podcast, and thanks everyone, and we'll see you in the next show.
Thanks everyone.